Audio RPG, the interactive roleplay podcast. Follow us on Anchor so you can listen to the journey of our player characters, or join the fun and join as one. Or just call in the chat, or maybe just call into World Build. Hey, Audio RPG on all streaming services. Tack Servan sits beside the dock platform on top of a crate of supplies awaiting his crew to arrive.
He's wearing a special team's coat and has a data pad sitting on his lap.
He takes a long look at the cloaked Thrax approaching and easily has him pegged as Atrax, the only name on the datapad's crew manifesto that was of Thrax origin, and checks him off. He was familiar with the war-torn Thrax and their peculiar names. Unworried and unfazed, Tack introduces himself and greets Atrax by name, extending his hand to shake.
Welcome to the crew of Fieldship 142, he says with a smile, proffering a handshake and asking each person's name as they arrive, checking them off in the manifest on the data pad.
Keeping his head down, Atrax signals for Tack to lower his voice. He was surprised to have encountered such a pleasant and polite helmet. Surely they all couldn't be this way. With prestigious licenses of his own, Atrax knew how inflated the helmet ego could become. But he could sense that Tack was quite grounded.
Meeting the other crewmates, Atrax will be quite friendly to them outwardly, but on the inside he's still observing them, analyzing them, making sure they aren't a threat, just like his own people were to him.
Tack senses Atrax's hesitation and prepares to retract his hand, when just then, emerging from under his cloak, Atrax's hand extends out and shakes Tack's.
If he can truly see that they are not a threat by how they introduce themselves, then as customary for his people, and specifically the subset of culture he is from, when meeting new clients, when meeting new allies, new friends, you customarily offer them a new weapon from their collection. So, Atrax would specifically try and find something in his collection, and if he doesn't have anything, he might try and even build one from scraps around the Fieldship, so that every member of the crew is given a new weapon, just as like a welcoming present.
Catching Tack by surprise, Atrax's second arm unfurls from under his cloak, handing over to Tack a pristine Thrax combat knife, its edge still warm. Tack was puzzled. Surely this wasn't for him. Atrax nudges it toward him and reveals that it is a welcoming present. Tack accepts, quite possibly the best knife he ever owned, and sheathes it inside of his special team's coat, and thanks him. Atrax nods, and the two peer up as Fieldship 142 finally arrives and docks beside the bridge. The ship was a fraction of the size of others, and wasn't at all like the glamorous or cool ones seen in the media. Atrax couldn't help but be appalled by its shoddy finish and raggedy thruster plating. Tack, on the other hand, has seen worse, but was more taken back by its sheer size, or lack thereof. The shuttle doors slide open, and stepping out onto the platform to greet the crew was a suspicious coach technician. Tack greets the technician, but is soon cut off by him, requesting the crew's registrations. Tack hands over the datapad, letting the tech observe and scan them in. The tech then delivers them a bit of good and bad news. He informs them that, as a handler, he has been assigned to their ship for 6 months to ensure caution is taken with their tackler. This was very unusual and unprecedented. Tack questions this matter, to which the tech shares that Coach has provided the crew twice the amount of resources to cover for the extra body on the ship. If only the ship was actually big enough to fit it all. Tack scratches his beard and figures, the more the merrier. He then inquires about the bad news. The tech removes his hat, letting his long hair down. He shares that the bad news is that their tackler needs repairs, and asks that they not enter the cockpit and disturb the tackler in the meantime. Atrax interjects and inquires about the types of repairs the tackler needs, while keeping his face obscured. The tech gives Atrax another long look, as if beginning to recognize the voice. "Coach repairs," he responds with, deflecting. the likes of which our greatest engineers could only provide. The technician smiles. I'm also visiting family for a week. He looks at Atrax again. Besides, won't your people be looking for you on Abelden? Abelden, a Thrax tradition observed several days from now. Atrax was too focused on getting off the planet to be offended by her racial assumptions of tradition. This was bad news for Atrax. Right this moment, Coach Security and the Armor Master are turning the place upside down in search of him. Right now, several helicopters are searching the area above the foundry.
Atrax is effectively just trying to get off a hostage situation from the station. Many of the warlords on the planet rely on Atrax to get their personal arms and weapons that they themselves use, that they trust the very most. So losing the strongest weapon and arms creator on the entire planet is a massive deal for them. And it's likely that if Atrax isn't sneaky enough trying to get to his field ship, that he could very well be shot at, injured, harmed. Many things could go wrong. But he's willing to try it because he wants to live life as his own man. He doesn't want to make weapons for war. He wants to make weapons and arms for protection of others.
The coach tech pardons himself and passes by. Tack spots a pistol on his belt. Some technician, he thinks. Tack notices Atrax's tension and suggests that they get their equipment and start boarding it on the ship for now.
I'd like to ask everyone to join me in the ship's rec room a couple hours after we put into orbit. It'll be a good chance for everyone to get acquainted. Hopefully Coach will have some contract details available for discussion by then. Once the gate and loading doors open, he picks up his pack and speaks to the assembled crew. Alright folks, let's get stowed away and prep for launch. Then turns to make his way across the boarding bridge.
Atrax and Tack enter the small ship, making their way into what appeared to be a rec room or an old lounge area, large enough for 2 to 3, but not nearly large enough for a full crew. Moments pass as the skeleton crew familiarizes themselves with the ship. Tack approaches the cockpit door and finds it locked and sealed. An odd feature for this shabby vessel. The idea of one person having the keys to this room was odd as well. Dangerous too. The crew hears footsteps across the docking bridge. Entering the ship and stepping into the rec room, the party is met by a heavily armed, bronze-skinned warrior of the Ink, a renowned faction of nomadic female warriors, often lending themselves to adventure. To have the Ink in your ranks was to have a weapon. She surveys the entire rec room slowly.
Entering the rec room of the ship slowly, she scans to see who her new crew members are going to be. Unenthused by her surroundings, she finds a quiet place to sit and survey the personalities of the other people who have joined the crew this early.
The distinct markings of the Ink people glow upon her face. She appeared unenthused by the drab, junk, and countless tripping hazards strewn about. Atrax turns and with one hand greets her with a wave as the others remain productive. Atrax spots and admires the craftsmanship of the blade resting upon her back. Tack stands and proceeds to introduce himself, and she in turn introduces herself as Capsis Discory, and they shake hands.
Capsis Discory was born to a family of female warriors called the Ink, with no known planet of origin. These skilled women are known for their distinct facial markings that glow and have no male ties within the immediate group. Often hired to support specialized tasks for both large and small corporations, the Ink are trained from a young age in different skills that are deemed profitable and are commonly found a part of Fieldship crews. Being from such nomadic people, going wherever the work requires, Capsis is well-traveled and specializes in hand-to-hand combat, weaponry, and linguistics. Her clumsy demeanor and small frame often leads others to doubt her capabilities, but when in action, her training is easy to identify.
Tack tells her about the recent update on their departure schedule. then takes one last trip outside for the last of his survival gear. Capsis didn't have many words. She makes her way to one of the corners and begins to unpack while observing her new crewmates. Tack steps outside and immediately spots approaching from afar the suspicious coach technician, along with 10 to 12 armed security guards and Atrax's armor master, approaching swiftly. Something was off, and knowing this wasn't good, Tack slowly begins to backpedal back into the ship. He calls out to Capsis and Atrax, asking if they were expecting any company. Atrax comes to his side and instantly spots and makes eye contact with the Thrax armor master, which causes a mass stir at the port as the armor master calls out Atrax's name and accuses him of being a traitor. Suddenly, Fieldship 142 begins to power up and mobilize. The sudden jarring forces Atrax to lose his footing, but with all arms on deck, he secures himself with an arm to spare, reaching out for Tack as the ship begins to lift off. Shocked, the suspicious technician gives the signal to fire to kill, and they all begin to pepper the Fieldship with intentions to stop them at all costs. Tack holds on to Atrax tightly while being pulled up into the ship, with several bullets grazing him. Capsis runs over and closes the shuttle door. Whoever was piloting this thing was doing a scary job. Tack pulls himself to his feet, looking to Atrax for answers. Atrax reveals that he is a coach forge master, and that his departure could cause a political upheaval or maybe even war, but it mattered not to him, as long as he was leaving. Capsis Discory observes. She's familiar with Coach's caliber of weapons, and had no reason not to believe him, as she watches his tools roll across the floor as the ship jerks hard to the left. Tack understands, but he isn't quite sold on the fact that they would want bullets between all of their eyes. No, there's something more to this. He realizes whatever their issue was, it involved the tackler in the other room who was now piloting their ship like a maniac. Capsis looks out the large window of the rec room and sees the surface of the planet moving farther and farther away. Some send-off, she thinks. Tack and Atrax sit outside the sealed cockpit door, holding on for dear life. What were they to do next?